Now hear the word of the Lord from Hebrews 4, verse 16a. So let us come boldly to the throne of our gracious God. This is the word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God. All right, Merry Christmas, everyone. Hey, Lachlan and Terry, thank you guys. That was wonderful. How many years in a row is this? 8. We've got a couple some milestones. 8's kind of an awkward milestone, but it feels like we've been doing that a long time. Justin and Megan Schaefer, this is their 23rd year leading Christmas Eve services at Sojourn. 23. That's what Megan said. That's what Meg said. Right? I thought I was seeing Meg. Anyway, if you guys missed it or you were still out in your cars when we brought everyone back in, well, there's Megan. Right? 23? That's what you said to them. Oh, in life. In life, still. Big achievement. This is my 40th Christmas being alive. No big deal. So our fire system, if the water pressure drops, it'll trigger the fire alarm. That can happen if sprinklers go off and water pressure drops, or it can happen if somewhere within like a couple of blocks something happens and water pressure in the whole system drops. So that's what set the alarm off. And then we had a melty plug over here. So, boy, never forget this one. Wild experience. Looks like we lost about half of this side of the room. So thank you guys for being the real Christians and sticking it out. Way to go. Yeah, if your friends went home, you should go make them feel bad afterwards. In the Christmas spirit, right? Well, thank you all for being with us tonight. If you're family visiting, thank you for making us part of your Christmas tradition this year. Last summer, my family and I, we went on a sabbatical. So we traveled all summer, and we ended the summer in Maine. Anybody ever been to Maine before? Boy, that was not enough yeses. Listen, I went to Maine, and I'll never be the same again after that. We finished in Acadia National Park. I wish I could explain it to you. It's just not something words can really do justice to. One of the days we went up, we bought tickets. You got to get tickets to get into the park, and then there's certain things in the park you have to get another ticket for. One of them is to drive up Cadillac Mountain, which, depending on where you've been in the world, it's not really a mountain. It's 1,500 feet above sea level, but the coast of Maine is so stark and severe, and it's on the coast. So standing 1,500 feet above the ocean is quite a bit different experience than, I don't know, being in the central United States 1,500 feet off the ground. So it's a slow, winding drive up there, and it leads you to a large horseshoe parking lot, and you get out, and then all of a sudden, the ocean is just there. And that's one of the things that really surprised me about Maine. Around almost every corner, it seems like the ocean would appear out of nowhere. Dramatic, intense, stark. And you get out of the parking lot, and then just the ocean is there. Maine is there with all of her rugged coastline. And when you got out, there was almost... You remember when churches used to have church buildings and not gyms, and you'd walk in and it would just get quiet all of a sudden? That's what it felt like getting out of the parking lot at the top of Cadillac Mountain. And before I could say anything, our kids had grown quite adventurous over the summer, and before we could set any ground rules or discuss how being on top of a mountain overlooking an ocean was going to go, my kids ran out towards what appeared to be the ocean, and then they stopped, and the picture I'm about to show you is not staged. They did this themselves, and so this is, it's up there. So that is, yeah, that's you. That's like 6 minutes out of the car, and I'm walking up, and I see this unbelievable rugged Maine coastline. I see the islands, and then I see my children holding one another. It's a gift to have children, and it's a gift if you get a season of time where your children like each other. And the summer, in some ways, just felt so magical for all of us all together. they held each other and they soaked in the view, and I soaked in the view of them soaking in the view. And I wish I could explain the moment to you. The air was chilly. The wind tasted like the ocean. Have you ever tasted when the wind tastes like the ocean? There was a silent awe amongst all the tourists catching their first glimpses. My children holding each other. I had two really distinct thoughts in that moment. The first one was, this might be the happiest moment of my life. It was so palpable, the happiness of that moment, and I was thankful to feel aware of it. This might be it right here if I could bottle this moment up. And then the second real distinct thought I had is, God is near us in this place. There's just times where it feels like the veil between our world and his is thinner, and he seems more near, more real. The peace, the calm, the hope. I just wish I could explain the moment to you, and I don't think I can. One thing you can't tell from that picture is that the summit of Cadillac Mountain spreads out in a downward slope. It's not quite like a cliff. It just kind of goes down and flat. And then there's a part where you can't tell what happens after that, and you assume it's a mountain and there's a cliff. There's all kinds of cracks and drops. Moments after I took that photo, my kids started running to what appeared to be the edge of a cliff. The wind started whipping, and then I realized, there's hikers here, and there's big dogs barking, and big dogs not on leashes barking, and then it started raining, and then wind was blowing from like 2 or 3 different directions in the rain with the dogs, with about 5,000 other tourists while my kids are running from a cliff or running to a cliff. And the shift from like peaceful God is in this place to terrified, chaotic anxiety it was a blink of an eye how fast that moment changed. As I became anxious, God left that place. Depending on what you've lived and where you've been, maybe that phrase, God was in that place, maybe that sounds too churchy. Maybe it just sounds hard to believe and you're skeptical. And I understand that. But that skepticism, that wondering where are the kinds of places God might be and how would I even know it if he was there, it's one of the reasons I love Christmas. Because God is in the place. He's in the places where our breath catches and our souls stir. God is in the place where an unexpected silence falls over everyone. And God is in the places where chaos and storms interrupt that peace. How could you say such a thing? How do you know? I know this is true because Christmas reminds us that God showed up in a stable. When's the last time you thought about that? If God can show up in a stable, well, it seems to me he could show up just about anywhere then. If God can show up where it wasn't safe for him, have you thought about this? How dangerous it was for God to be born into human hands? Because they could have drowned that baby boy as easily as they nailed him to a tree a few years later, if not easier. If he can show up there where it's not safe for him, he can show up in the scary and dangerous places too. If he can show up as the son of a peasant girl, he can show up around the poor and the hungry and the lonely and the anxious. And the more I think about it, I think that if we would think about Christmas a little bit more, we might just become convinced that God could show up anywhere. It's one of the few things I've become quite convinced of in my time as a pastor, and I wish I could explain it to you. But if God is there on a mountain in Maine, and he was there in the wind, and he was there in the rain, and I know this is true because he showed up in a stable. Christmas reminds us to be filled with the expectation of hope. It reminds us that there is no place where we are safe from the presence of God. It reminds us there is no place that he's not willing to show his face. And I can't help but wonder what might happen to us if we started showing up in the places, wherever we might be, with the expectation that God might be there waiting for us. And maybe that's some of what it means to come boldly to the throne of God. Boldly, like a child coming to his father. And if this little baby was Lord at his birth, as the song sings, then he's Lord everywhere all the time. So, come to him, expect him, look for him. I wish I could explain it to you better. If God was found in a stable, then who knows where we might find him next? Would you pray with me?